These words are from Spiritual Awareness by Ernest Holmes. Since thought is a definite, dynamic, consciously directed, and intelligent energy, we know that its creative action will definitely neutralize a negative condition. Even spiritual law must be definitely used if it is to provide tangible results in our experience. We should know that our word is the activity of spirit through us, and as such cannot be denied. If we persist in seeing the truth rather than the false, then that which is true will appear. Thus all the evils of our yesterdays disappear and have no more effect on our lives. Let's take these words into our hearts and mind. And as we come together this morning, we come together with the faith that this is a new and beautiful and wonderful day. This is the day that God has made. And we are grateful for it. We recognize that as we come together, we bring all that we are, all the spirit that each of us expresses, and it is so magnified as a community. It is a light into our lives, and it is a light to this greater community of Dayton. And it is a light of peace and harmony and love. And we just accept it as our truth, letting any of the negative of yesterday just fall away, knowing that it has no power over us, that we are fresh and new and perfect. And together we say, and so it is.
Let me just get on my little notes all together here so I don't lose track of anything. So, this whole year we're working through our global vision, which is a world that works for everyone. And so each week we take a little bite-sized piece of that vision and look at it in some more detail. And we're spending the whole year sort of putting that vision on piece by piece so that we live from it as fully as possible so that it can come into form by means of us, because the world only changes when we change, right? It's not a thing that can just change itself. It changes because we change. And so today's bite-sized piece is, we see a world in which humanity rediscovers the creative power of thought. As my colleague Dr. John Waterhouse would say, we see a world that works for everyone, a world where everyone knows how it works. I like that addition. It's the how it works part we're going to talk about today a little bit. The vision says that a world in which humanity rediscovers the creative power of thought. And I thought that was a really interesting term until I realized that the mystics have been telling us this for centuries, that our thought is the power in our lives, the way we think. Gautama Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. All that we are founded on, all that we are is founded on our thoughts and formed of our thoughts. Our life is the creation of our mind. In Proverbs 23, subsection 7, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And Jesus said over and over, it is done unto you as you believe. So our thoughts create what we are, and what we are creates what we experience. One of the candlelight readings says, what matters is not what you are, but what you think. And that's because what we think shapes what we are. And then when we simply are that fully and completely, our lives begin to change. Our lives begin to change. But we hear that everywhere. You know, our thoughts are creative. It's become pop culture. We hear it on Facebook and Oprah and everywhere. But I'll tell you what, putting it up on a Facebook meme is not the same as living it. I tried that. And it doesn't work unless and until we're willing to actually practice it and make it part of who we are. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote that possibly the greatest discovery we have ever made is that mind is the creative center in us. Thought is the directive agency in that creative center. So thought is the directive agency creating our life experience. The first thing that ought to be obvious, it sure was to me, is that not all thought is created equal. Some of our thoughts give us expansiveness and joy and open-heartedness and peace of mind and calmness and prosperity, and others make us weaker and sicker and meaner and poorer, right? Been there, done that. Rabbi Neckman of Breslov, who was an 18th century Kabbalist, said, "You are where your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be." I really like that little encapsulation. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. What we think about, we bring about. We are always doing that. We're always creating with our thoughts, whether we know it or not. The things we think about most powerfully become our life circumstances and experiences. And here's the really difficult thing. That's true whether these thoughts are conscious or unconscious or subconscious, right? The whole mind is working. The whole mind is working. And if I carry around a subconscious full of thoughts of fear and danger, my experience will be that life is dangerous and fearful. If I carry around an unconscious full of those thoughts that I'm not enough, my life will be a bunch of experiences where I can feel like I'm not enough. But if they're subconscious and unconscious, what do we do about it? If we don't even know we're thinking them, how do we change that? That's the rub. But the thing about it is, our subconscious thoughts and our unconscious thoughts began as conscious thoughts. They got into the unconscious and the subconscious because we thought them over and over and over, or because we responded in such a way that we managed to repress something. It's like the basement and the cellar of our minds. You know, the conscious mind is the main floor, and then there's the basement, and then there's that dark, dank hole, the cellar, which is where all the stuff that was so shame-inducing or threatening went. We crammed it into the cellar. And the logic of that part of our minds is, if it worked in the past, I'm going to do it again. If it worked when I was 3, I'm going to do it now that I'm 60, right? Not very productive. It's not productive, it's not joyful, it's not helpful, it's painful. But the really good thing is that since Holmes put it sort of like this, what we are now, what we now have and experience is the result of what we have thought. The answer to what we shall be is therefore contained in what we're thinking now. So when we change what we're thinking now, what we shall be becomes that. That's real freedom. That is total, complete freedom. Since what we are now is the result of what we have thought, the answer to what we shall be is contained in what we are now thinking. Sister must have thought so too. Woo. So nothing we've done in the past, or thought in the past, or held on to in the past requires that we think it, or hold on to it, or behave like that anymore. We're not bound by any precedent. That's real freedom. It means if we want something to change in our lives, we hold the cause right here in our thinking. If we can come to know, said Ernest Holmes, that one kind of thought will neutralize another, will wipe it out, then we can set about to change our thinking and our world of experience. So what wipes out negativity? Joyful positivity, right? What wipes out hopelessness is hope and faith. No matter what I've produced, no matter what I have produced in my life through my thinking, I can change it. I can change it by deliberately creating a habit of thinking that is aimed at where I want to be. You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. I love that. Here he comes. And here's the thing. The brain, this wonderful tool we've been given for consciousness, never stops thinking. Have you noticed that? Have you ever sat down to meditate and gone, good Lord, what's going on in here? Thought after thought after thought after thought after thought after thought. It never stops thinking. So what we have to do is not just stop thinking negatively, we have to give the brain something new to think. We have to start thinking. We have to replace our negative thinking with something life-giving and creative and prosperous and loving. We have to replace old habits with the new habits of thought. How do we know then? How do we know if it's in the parts of our minds that we're not conscious of? How do we know what to change? Well, the amazing thing is that thought is creative. So all we have to do is look around. All we have to do is look around. If there's some part in our lives that is not working for us, it's a sure bet. There is a pattern of thought, a deeply laid rut, if you will, of thought that is maintaining it in our lives. If you're lonely, there's probably a deep thought that tells you that you are all alone in the universe. Or a deep thought that tells you that you are unlovable or that you don't fit in. If you are always in economic hardship, there's probably a thought pattern deep in you that says, I am not worthy of abundance. Or that the universe is limited and the pie is small and somebody got your share. If you're fearful or unhappy, your thought habits will tend to be about fear and unhappiness. Ernest Holmes said that our thoughts should tend more and more toward an affirmative attitude of mind that is positive and stable, and above all toward a real unity with spirit that is already complete and perfect. And we've been talking about that for a couple of months. January and February were all about who we really are. The only thing we could be, the offspring of the creative power of the universe, right? There's no way we could be separated from it ever. There's only one divine life, and it lives in us and kind of hangs out waiting for us to notice that it lives in us. So when we do notice it, then we can draw upon it. And so this is the holy ground to which we take our thinking habits. When we stand on that holy and very fertile ground, we tackle our thinking habits there and give ourselves new ways to think. We put our thoughts where we want to go. And then we keep repeating them. We have to keep repeating them. So if I want to be a person who experiences more happiness, I have to become a person who habitually thinks in constructive, joyful ways. If I want to be healthier, I have to become a person who constantly thinks in constructive ways about healthy living and then follows through. If I want to be a more abundant person, I have to focus on a life of abundance, thoughts of a life of abundance, rather than, always look. I've been carrying around this 7 cents in my pocket. Don't ask me why. It's been in the pocket of like every jacket I put in. I keep pulling out 7 cents. And I need to replace it with a $100 bill. You know what I mean? Because I am not broke, but every time I see that 7 cents, I think, wow, that's really chump change. I need to get something bigger in there. I have to be thinking about something larger, someplace that I want to be. About 100 years ago, Dr. Holmes pointed out this. He said, the way you change that is you take the very highest thought you can have in this moment, and then you spend some time every day enlarging it in your own consciousness. We come to the edge of what we know, and then we sort of lean forward, and that pushes us a little, that enlarges us a little bit. So every day we take the highest thought we can know about something and enlarge it a little bit. Spend time remembering that the sacred ground we stand on is fertile, and it's growing this idea in us. And we have to start. Starting is key, I'll tell you. We have to start. We have to identify someplace in our lives that isn't quite the way we want it to be, and say, what is the highest thought I can think about that? For example, if we're not feeling prosperous, so we want more prosperity and abundance, we start to think constructive, joyful thoughts about our own prosperity. And then we stretch that. And the very first thing that we can do, the highest thought we can think about abundance, is gratitude, right? That is the highest place we can put our minds when it comes to abundance. So when we get up in the morning, we make a gratitude list. And before we go to bed in the evening, we make a gratitude list. The regular practice of gratitude will change you, I guarantee it, rapidly and deeply and permanently, faster than anything else. And once we start to be really grateful for the blessings we already have, they start to grow. They just start to grow. It's like a big yes to the universe. Thank you, I'll take some more. But it also makes us appreciate what we already have. I was sentenced to gratitude practice about 30 years ago by my first AA sponsor. She said, I won't take your calls unless you do this. Whew, I said, okay. She was very gentle, so I knew she meant it. And it was so hard at first. It felt like, I really felt like I was sentenced to it. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel authentic. It felt forced. It felt like I wasn't being truthful because I wasn't grateful. I was beat up. So my first couple of gratitude lists, she made me write down 10 damn things every day. And some days it was all I could do to come up with 10. It would be things like my bed, running water, hot shower, breakfast, whatever I could find. That's noisy bird outside waking me up in the morning. It was so difficult. But miraculously, one day, my list was so easy to write and I couldn't stop. And I thought, I need to stop finding things to be grateful for. And I thought, that's the silliest thing I ever heard. Why don't you just start being grateful for everything? So I did. It was a miraculous thing. And so being grateful started to feel natural to me. That's when we've embodied something. It may feel stiff and forced at first. It may feel stiff and forced to affirm the greatness of your life when you don't feel like life is so great. But pretty soon it becomes natural. And when we embody it, guess what? It drops out right in front of us. It just shows up. And it's never stopped growing for me. I think I feel more grateful today than I have ever felt in my life. And I've been doing this practice of gratitude for 30 years now. And I'm still sober, and I'm also, I have like a wonderful life. Wonderful life. I feel that way about it. So if you are feeling lonely, start by calling to mind all the people you love well and thoroughly on a daily basis, and let yourself be filled with appreciation and love for those people. Like gratitude, it starts to grow. It's the highest thought you can have. Appreciation and love for these other people. It begins to grow in you, and as you spend time with it, enlarging it a little bit at a time, starts to take over your life. And pretty soon, there's not a moment where you're not feeling love. And you know what that means? Everybody loves you. When you walk into a room full of love, everybody kind of goes, ooh, I want to know that person. Because it feels good to be around a person of love. It feels good. If you are suffering from difficult conditions, and we all do, even there, especially there, taking the highest thought you can find and enlarging it a little bit helps you experience the conditions in a different way. If you have an illness or a disease of the body, and you take the highest possible thought about your own aliveness that you can find, and work with it, and sit in it, and come from it every day, your experience starts to get better. Even if it's a disease you don't know what to do about it, nobody knows what to do about. If you're having difficulty on your job, this is when I've practiced a lot over the years. Because I used to have this thing about working for the most difficult person I could find. I did a whole string of those. I mean, I worked for a guy who picked up a package of lead type and threw it at me one day. And then I worked for a Russian social worker. She had this wonderful accent. She sounded like Natasha. But she picked up a pen and flung it into my face one day. And then I worked for a guy who used to come in swearing every morning. And then I just picked these really difficult people to work for. And I don't know what that was all about. Some sort of martyrdom I had to work through, I guess. But, I found that if I would take the highest possible thought about my job, what is there to appreciate in this moment? And what have I learned from this that I can appreciate? If I started there and worked from there into the highest thought of perfect employment I could have at that moment, everything changed. I mean, I went through, the lessons were harder and harder and harder, and finally I just lost the need to work for dangerous people. That's sort of what it felt like for a while. And then I had a really great job that I loved for a while, and then I was called into the best job I've ever had, which is this. This was the highest idea. I didn't even have it. It was an idea that was dropped on me one day, and I went, really? Okay. And I could not have asked for a better gig, frankly. I mean, there is nothing more satisfying to me in my whole life than what I do now. So if we take the highest possible thought and just keep thinking about it and working to enlarge it, then it becomes comfortable to us in a very short time. It becomes our habitual thought. It becomes the pattern that our brain uses. Henry David Thoreau said, a single footstep will not make a path on earth, and a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. And to make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. This is how we change our lives. We have to retrain our minds. We have to retrain our minds. So we start somewhere. We start. And when that gets satisfactory and feels comfortable, the good things we're saying about it, most of us can look around and find another area of our lives that isn't quite the way we want it to be. And we can start working there. And we create this new, deep mental path by finding the highest thought we can find and enlarging it. And then finding the highest thought we can find and enlarging it. And the other thing we do is to spend time remembering that the ground we stand on is sacred, that we are one with this allness, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, infinite intelligence. Remember that the highest God and the innermost God is one God, and remember that within us is the indwelling presence of love. The indwelling presence of joy, the indwelling presence of abundance and health and peace. And connect with that, however you connect with it. Because when you listen for its voice, what you hear is that it's telling you all the ways you are beloved, and all the ways you are precious, and all the ways you are magnificent, and all the ways you are necessary. And it will support this reconstruction of your thinking if you simply lean into it and trust that your new ways of thinking are sinking into every corner of your being. You're making them yours. Know that the mind within you is the same mind that created and maintains all existence. That you stand on sacred ground to do this work of making sure your thoughts are where you want to be. And then you put that power to work in your lives. You just start. Just start. That's all you have to do. So join me in a moment of contemplation and joy, please. I'm going to spend a moment, and I'm going to finish up with Ernest Holmes' prayer for peace in our world, because I think it is so beautiful and so important. But before we do that, let us just remember that right where we stand is holy ground. That burning bush burns within each one of us all the time. And that its message is, I am that I am. And that is first person. Own it. Take it in. Remember. Remember that you are the living presence of Spirit itself, however you think of it. You are its outlet into the world. You are the place it shows up uniquely as you. And as we remember that, we find the highest thought possible in this moment about our world. And the highest thought I can find in this moment is that this world is part of this one we call God. And that despite appearances, therefore, it is a place of joy, love, unity, harmony, peace, abundance, and greatness. And now the words of our founder, Ernest Holmes. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I know there is but one mind, which is the mind of God, in which all people live and move and have their being. I know there is a divine pattern for humanity, and within this pattern there is infinite harmony and peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness. I know that the mind of humans, being one with the mind of God, shall discover the method, the way, and the means best fitted to permit the flow of divine love between individuals and nations. Thus, harmony, peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness will be experienced by all. I know there shall be a free interchange of ideas, of cultures, of spiritual concepts, of ethics, of educational systems, and scientific discoveries, for the good belongs to all alike. I know that because the divine mind has created us all, we are bound together in one infinite and perfect unity. In bringing about world peace, I know that all people and all nations will remain individual, but unified for the common purpose of promoting peace, happiness, harmony, and prosperity. I know that deep within every person, the divine pattern of perfect peace is already implanted. I now declare that in each person and in leaders of thought everywhere, this divine pattern moves into action and form, to the end that all nations and all people shall live together in peace